Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is the Software Plaza podcast. I'm Twain Taylor, editor at Software Plaza, and I have the privilege of discussing all things tech with my guest each week. And it's one of the things I really enjoy doing. And if you go and look up the archive, you'll find just loads of conversations. I think we're probably close to 100 or so over the past 2.5 years that we've been doing this. So we've covered a lot. Go and check out all that we've done. It's at softwareplaza.com and just look for the podcast section there. I have with me today Eric Herzog, and he's got a little nickname that he's going to tell us about right at the start. He's Chief Marketing Officer at Infinidat. That's InfiniDat. You can check them out at infinidat.com. So they are into storage management, and well, they really do a lot of things in the storage space. And Eric is going to be telling us all about it. And their website says the standard in enterprise storage. So we've been having like quite a few conversations on different topics recently. We covered running AI models. We covered incident management, vulnerability management, and we spoke about vector databases, so many things. And now we're getting to talk about data. So we really want to cover the entire end-to-end pipeline of cloud and software delivery, and data is really crucial. So I'm really glad we're getting to talk about that today. With that intro, I want to welcome Eric. Eric, it's great to have you with us. Let's get you started with telling us about that nickname that you have in the storage space and how it came about.
Well, Dwayne, thank you very much for having Infinidat join the Software Plaza podcast. So we do high-end enterprise storage solutions. We sell mostly to the global Fortune 500, but also to service providers. In fact, we have 24% of the Fortune 50 are customers of Infinidat. So we're a smaller company, but we punch way above our weight and sell again to the most demanding customers on the planet. Now, I myself been doing storage technology, whether it be a startup or in big companies such as IBM, EMC, or Seagate, the hard drive company, for 40 years, roughly half in startups and roughly half in the big companies. So anyway, I was doing a webinar, this is years ago, with one of the leading storage industry analysts. And so when he posted it up, the video, and posted up on LinkedIn, and this is in the early days of Twitter, he called me Zoggenstore. So that name is sort of stuck, and my Twitter handle is @Zoggenstore. So I've been using it ever since that industry analyst started calling me Zoggenstore. So I've been done it ever since, and I love storage. People think that storage is not cool. Storage is the coolest thing. What people don't realize, particularly in companies and in the bigger enterprises, right, the global Fortune 1000, it's critical. Over 90% of their most valuable data assets is sitting on their enterprise storage. So if they don't take care of it and don't treat it right and don't make sure that it has the right cyber technology, right, to help you thwart ransomware and malware, what you need from availability, your data is suspect. And as you know, data is the lifeblood of all companies these days. That's what keeps companies going. Their people and the data their people work with. And we make sure that data is safe, available, and protected from a cyber perspective. So that's what we do at Infinidat.
All right. Wow. That's really cool to know about that story, about how the name came about, Zoggin Store. Um, I wanted to also ask you a bit about your startup because you mentioned when we were just chatting before the start of the podcast that you started up and it got acquired. Tell us a bit about that journey as well.
Sure. So if you look at my LinkedIn profile, for example, you see I'm like half global Fortune 500, IBM twice, EMC, which is now part of Dell, but when I was there was the largest storage company in the world at 25 billion. But and Seagate and Maxtor, which were both in the hardware space, but again also global Fortune 500. The other half are small companies: Infinidat, Tarman, Topio, Milex, several of them which have gotten acquired. Now, in the small company size, my background is varied. I started in product management, not a marketing person. Okay, I've learned how to do the marketing, whether that be what we do with the press, with the analysts, what we do with influencers such as you guys. what we do from providing sales tools, our website, what we do with social media demand gen. I learned all that. I started literally speccing products, pricing, forecasting, what should the next product be? What are the roadmaps? And while I don't do that at Infinidat and all the other companies since then, both big and small, I've run not only the marketing function, but also the product management function, okay, big or small. But in the smaller companies, one time the CEO came to me and said, you know what, we got to build stuff. So as a system company like Infinidat is where we ship something physical. And he said, well, we don't have anybody to do it. I can't afford. Can you do it? And I said, well, I used to be on the manufacturing team at Maxtor, so I know how it works. I wasn't a manufacturing guy. So he said, okay, done, you have it. So for 3 years, I ran manufacturing, supply chain, all our return stuff, support and service, and a couple other starts. I've been the chief revenue officer and the CMO. I've run human resources. I've been the head of human resources 3 times. And in one startup for 18 months, I was the CFO as well as the CMO. And we raised $17 million from tier one VCs. I had to go through a PricewaterhouseCoopers audit because, as you know well, in the startup side, tier one VCs want you, they'll make you go through an audit because to go public, you have to go
Yeah.
through an audit, right? So they think it's like
Yep.
practicing to go public. So I had to go through an audit, and my background is not finance. I have a master's degree in Chinese history from the University of California. So that was but I had to do everything in finance from paying the bills, collecting money from our customers, and everything finance people do, right? The quarterly financials to present to the board. I had to do all that. So I've had a real varied background. In the big companies, it's been product management, marketing, and sales. My last job at IBM was CMO, the IBM storage division, roughly a $7 billion company if it wasn't part of IBM, but also the vice president of global channel sales, and I had a $2 billion sales quota. So I had 2 jobs at IBM, both sales side and marketing side. In the startups, it's been much broader than that. So that's my background. And again, all of it has been in the storage sector. I've not done servers, right? However, I know how storage impacts your server infrastructure, your AI workloads, what impact do you have when you're running video surveillance, or how it impacts your SAP or Oracle workloads, because storage is where that data ends up. So you need to
Right.
have it available. You need to have it fast, performant, right? And performance. I've never heard someone say, well, I'd like that Oracle workload to go slower. That just doesn't happen, right? So every year they want it faster. So that's the sort of the motto in the storage industry is bigger, more capacity, better, okay, more feature functions, bigger, faster, better, and cheaper. So they
Right.
always want the same thing for less money. So you have to adapt and understand how to do a storage strategy that delivers those things no matter what. And I would argue now the hot things around the better part are cyber storage and storage for AI workloads and use cases.
I really want to get into that stuff, especially the AI stuff, because that really comes up on our talks a lot. But yeah, I have a Maxtor hard drive that I bought like 15 years ago, and I just forgot about it. I recently found it, spun it up. It works just fine. I found a gold mine of like photos, videos, and stuff that I quickly backed up. So, yeah, that was a nice little memory then. Good to know that I'm meeting someone who was with Maxtor, founded Maxtor. Yeah, amazing little connection there. Uh, but anyway, moving on from my data storage to enterprise data storage. You mentioned, enterprises want their data to be faster, more efficient, cheaper,
Right.
and I'd argue even with the same security that they've always been used to, if not more. And that comes up as well. But could you paint a picture for us about what is now looked at as traditional data storage? Because that definition keeps changing every few years.
Right.
But as of today, what would you say is considered traditional data storage?
So traditional data storage is a system level with a bunch of software. So, for example, with us, we have close to 100 patents granted, another 20 filed. 2 of them are for hardware architecture. Everything else is software. So the big differentiator in the storage world is your software, your cyber software. Yes, you get certain speed of your storage system from DRAM or flash or hard drives, But you also get, since everyone buys from the same hard drive guy or the same flash guy, the reason one solution is faster than the other is how you take that hardware and optimize it with software. Same thing with availability, same thing with cyber. So in the storage world, it's a system play, okay, particularly in the enterprise. And it's what are the things you're delivering to the table? The current things delivering to the table are not just speed, okay, not just availability, reliability. Those are kind of the old style checkboxes. But now new checkboxes involve, from a storage perspective, one, cyber. What are you doing to implement cyber technology into a storage system? So there's other cyber technology, right? Your security operations center, your SOAR or SIM software, right? The cybersecurity software like Microsoft Sentinel or IBM QRadar. Okay, so that's that side. But now it's great. I got that, but now how are you helping me? Since 90% of my data in my enterprise is sitting on storage, how are you helping me keep that cyber secure? Okay, so that's a newer checkbox item. The other one is AI, and AI is two methods. First is how to use AI inside of your system to make it easier to use, self-healing, right? Solve problems faster. Let's take us, for example. We have a technology called InfiniVerse, and it is an AI inside the storage system platform. And InfiniVerse allows us to fix problems many times before our customers even know. And in fact, 70% of our issues in the field are solved via software on InfiniVerse before our customers even know they've got a problem. Okay, so that's AI in the system. Then the rest is, how does your storage help your AI workload? What do you do to assist me with the performance? Because AI is very performant. AI, by the way, is just another workload. So if you need cybersecurity for Oracle, SQL, Mongo, and Cassandra, you sure as heck need cybersecurity for AI. All AI does is a intense automation process, right? But it's still a software. So if I'm the cyber criminal, I'm going to attack your Oracle workload. I'm going to attack your SAP workload. And if you're using AI to, let's say, do supply chain, I'm going to attack that too. Because the data, remember, AI is looking at data and basically dramatically accelerating the pace at which that data can be, questions answered about that data, decisions made, leveraging that data, but it's still about the data. And cyber criminals want to take your data, right, and hold it for ransom, or in the worst case, malware guys destroy it. So AI, how do you help AI workloads, and then AI in the system, cyber. The other thing that's come up lately, because one of my former employers, which will remain nameless, has had a big slip. They were acquired, and there's been a lot of discussions publicly by the storage press, the storage analysts, and just people in the storage community about, support and service not being what it used to be. So there's been a big effort. Is great. The AI helps you with support and service when it's in your storage system, right? But also, what are you doing to give me, if you will, the white glove treatment, right? When you go to the fancy hotels in the world, if you're at the Mandarin Orient, if you're at the Four Seasons, if you're at the Ritz-Carlton, when the guy opens the door, he's got the white gloves on and they do everything for you, right? You're at the fancy, expensive hotel. Same thing at the fancy restaurant, right? So that's become an issue, particularly in high-end enterprise storage, is how are you providing white glove support and service? And by the way, that also ties, and you've probably covered it, Twain. As you know, there's an IT skills gap globally, right? I saw an estimate by one of the analyst firms, 27% of the IT jobs in the entire world there's no one to fill them. They're staying empty because there's no one who's qualified to do the job. So they're not going to hire someone who is working at a McDonald's and say, hey, come be one of our IT guys, right? It doesn't work that way. So, that survey was actually at the end of 2024, and 27% of IT jobs are open. So anything you can do to make the system easier. We have one customer, for example, they've got 30 petabytes, which is gobs of storage, by the way, gobs and gobs, 30 petabytes. They have two admins, both part-time, but it's two humans, but that works out to one full-time employee managing 30 petabytes. Well, that's actually in the storage world incredible, but that gets to ease of use and how do you help me with this IT skills gap better manage my storage when I don't have a human being to do the work, or I only have, in this case, they have two part-time people. So one human for 30 petabytes in the storage industry is actually incredible capability of managing the storage from a regular base. So those are like the check boxes now from the old traditional, which was really about availability, performance, and reliability. Now it's expanded with the cyber, the AI, and what are you doing with this white glove support and service? Because I don't always have people to do the work, so I need help, right? So can you, Mr. Storage Company, help us? And we fit well in all three of those categories.
Right, right. Can you trace for us a bit today where it stands in terms of the kind of storage options available? Because there's different storage types based on needs, how fast you want to access your data, how much data
Right.
you have, and various other criteria like that. What are some of the key factors there? And I'm sure a lot of listeners and viewers here would resonate with that decision when you describe some of those options because they've probably made those decisions. But kind of trace it for us. What are
Sure,
the
sure.
options with
All right.
storage?
So let me show you a graphic here that will get us where we want to go.
Mhm.
So now when you look at our solutions, we're high-end enterprise only. So there are mid-range storage solutions and entry. We don't do those, other companies do, but we only do high-end only. The
Okay.
key thing is really there's three types of storage. There's storage that helps you in the backup world, and we have actually two solutions there. Our InfiniBox, the original InfiniBox, which uses hard drives, what's known in the storage industry as a hybrid array, and also our InfiniGuard solution. Both of those can be used for backup workloads. Okay, so when you're backing things up, and the key determines when you back up is backup when you're doing it does impact the performance of your applications and servers. So I want your backup to be as fast as possible. It's called shortening the backup window. And we can do that with the InfiniBox or with the InfiniGuard.
All
Second
right.
thing is if you have data lost, you need to restore the data, right? And when you
Yep.
restore the data, you want it to be restored as fast as possible. So the performance of those boxes is critical. Now, for primary storage, when you think about things like performance critical apps, business critical containers, virtual machines, big data, all your traditional business applications, right? SAP, Oracle, etc. The key things there are built around high performance, reliability, and things like 100% availability. For example, we guarantee on our InfiniBox SSA, which uses flash technology, and InfiniBox, which uses hard drive technology, we guarantee 100% availability in writing. And again, most of our customers are Global Fortune 500. So, we're putting our money where our mouth is by putting that in writing. We also, by the way, guarantee performance. Okay. Everyone wants that Oracle workload that took 5 hours 2 years ago to now run in 1 hour. Okay. And we guarantee our performance on both our InfiniBox All Flash, the SSA, and our InfiniBox platform. So we guarantee that in writing as well. Okay. Now, you also need to have a strong software component. What differentiates, everyone uses the same hardware, mostly. Okay. We use processors, so do my competitors. We use hard drives and flash, so do my competitors. So what differentiates one storage solution from the other are a couple things. One is your storage system, your operating system. Okay.
All
You
right.
have Mac OS and Windows, right? For us, it's called the Infuse OS. It's our storage operating system
Okay.
that runs across our platforms. So that's an
Okay. Okay.
important thing you need to focus on.
Would you give us like a illustration of what it's similar to Infuse OS? Is it based on Linux? Is it something else?
It's a Linux-based operating system. And again, just think of it as if you're running a server or you're running a laptop, there's an operating system on it, right? The Mac
Right.
OS, Windows, Linux, right? And the Infuse OS is essentially an operating system. All storage systems, whether it's ours or our competitors, literally have an operating system that does nothing but take care of storage. Storage
Okay.
is basically the data, of course. So how do you put the data on the storage? If you put the data a certain way, it's slow. If you put the data on the storage another way, it's fast. Okay. If you
Right.
put it a certain way, you may not be reliable. If you put it a different way, it's reliable. So the storage operating systems from all vendors, in our case, the Infuse OS, is around optimizing the data from a performance perspective, a
Right.
reliability perspective, an availability perspective, and now a cyber perspective. So that software is what binds all storage systems. And of course, it's different operating system for every storage vendor you look at. Okay. And then obviously you want to separate down into primary workloads.
Sorry, sorry to interrupt, but I want to ask,
Sure.
with even like the OS and the management layer here, the
Mhm.
software layer, with many of your customers, they probably are coming from an existing OS that they've already been using for a while.
Right.
So in that case, how do they approach this? Do they use both alongside each other, or do you
Yeah.
suggest
So
a
yeah,
migration?
yeah. Normally what they do is they migrate the data from one system to another.
Okay.
Okay. And then they use that new, it's just like if you were using a Windows machine and then bought uh, a PowerBook, right? A MacBook Pro, actually. It used to be called the PowerBook. And it's a, now a lot of the GUIs does the same thing, right? Pull down windows in Word, what you do with Excel, but there's a version that runs on the Mac OS and a version that runs on Windows, right? So in the storage world, it's the same thing. We have a number of data services like replicating data, right? There's earthquakes, there's floods, there's fires, there's tsunamis. So big enterprises have an alternative data center and they replicate the data physically from California to Singapore or Singapore to Sydney. And they do that to keep the data safe in case there's a physical down. Or, by the way, the most common form of data loss is actually you and me, humans. The second most common form of data loss is actually fire. So even though anytime you
Yeah.
talk to a data center guy, they'll tell you, oh, we have fire suppression, blah, blah, blah. Data centers still burn up. And guess what? Your storage systems, as much as we have 100% availability and all this great reliability, when there's a fire or an earthquake or a flood, your storage system gets destroyed. So you physically transfer the data to a remote location so that if you do have a fire, a flood, or a tsunami, that your data is still available to the company, right? Remember, our companies are mostly global Fortune 500. So they're all over the world. They're not only in Australia, they're not only in California, they're not only in London, right? They're all over the world. So they replicate that data and they do that with us or if it's some other vendor as well. So you use the new operating system and the differences are how does the operating system do those things? For example, we have on this chart, you can see service oriented automation and set it and forget it IT operations. What that means is our operating system is so heavily automated that you literally can leave it and often it runs itself. So, for example, that's why that one customer I mentioned to you earlier has one human or equivalent of one human, two part-time people, but one human running 30 petabytes. That's because we're so automated in how the system runs itself that you don't need a lot of human intervention, which of course then gives you a better return on investment and a better total cost of ownership. So those are the type of things, and those usually come from the operating system in the storage. Just the way you would say, I mean, I'm a Mac guy. I've never used a Windows machine, and even though Word and Excel are on there, I've tried to use a Windows machine once or twice. It's way harder. I know anyone who's a Microsoftian will tell me I'm crazy. I'm not. I'm just being objective, and I don't own Apple stock. So um, it really is different. So the operating systems are the same way. Some operating systems are more complex, they're more
Right.
cumbersome, right? And that's just the way you would argue when someone picks an operating system, particularly for their laptops, right? If you're a global Fortune 500, I was at IBM and we had partnerships with both Apple and with Microsoft. And I'd say when I was at IBM, 60 to 65% of the IBM employees, even though IBM was, as you know, the guy behind the PC revolution. Apple might have started it, but what made it big was IBM's PCs. They still were
Right.
mostly using Mac OS machines, right? So the storage operating systems are tied to their system, though. So the storage operating system, I can't manage another competitor's storage system, and they can't manage mine. So that's part of the way storage systems are heavily differentiated is that operating system. How's the cyber? The cyber is built into the operating system. What does it do? How does it work? How does it help me protect my data, right? Same thing with
Yeah.
performance,
Yeah.
right? It's heavily tied to the operating system and how the operating system optimizes the physical hardware that the operating system sits on. Just like laptops, desktops, and servers, it's exactly the same model, except storage is so complex underneath the hood, right? Underneath the hood of your car, it's so complex, or wait, is it the boot? Well, no, the boot is the back. I forgot what it's called in the UK, but you know what I mean. So what we would call the hood of the car in the US What's underneath there can be very simple or very complex. What matters is you sit in the car and you drive it, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
some engines are complex and some engines are not. And there's arguments as to what should be complex or not. I mean, race cars are pretty complex. Your Honda Accord or your Toyota Corolla probably isn't. That doesn't mean there might not be more parts in one of those two car manufacturers, and there may be good reasons, or it may just be, not as good engineering. It's hard to tell, right? So
yeah,
underneath
yeah.
the hood, it's about your operating system. That's what matters.
Talk to us a bit about kind of what you're mentioning just now about even comparing cars, a Formula One car versus a Corolla. There's differences in form factor, the differences in
Right.
efficiency and all of that. And talk to us about how that applies to storage. How has hardware changed? How is form factor changing? And even in like the consumer hardware space, we've seen that hardware devices have been shrinking over time. They've
Right.
been becoming smaller but more powerful and more efficient. Talk to us a bit about that trend in the storage space and how it's playing out.
Sure. So let's tackle the easy one, power efficiency. All data centers, whether they're using AI, I know you've had, as you mentioned earlier, several podcasts focusing on AI. So whether the data center is doing AI or it's a more traditional data centers globally are running out of power. And in fact, in the IT press, everyone who's listening to the podcast has probably seen articles about the explosion in data center construction. Now, part of that is to handle AI, but the other part is just standard data centers are power hungry. So, what we've done in our generations is always make them more power efficient. We design for power efficiency. That's part of our design model. Obviously, we design for performance and availability, but we make sure because data centers are power hungry, be they doing AI or whether it be traditional, is to make them more power efficient. Now, one of the ways you do that is to shrink the physical form factor. So we do high-end enterprise storage. Traditionally, high-end enterprise is a full rack in a data center, what's called a 42 rack U data center. That's an industry standard configuration. And so that's very traditional. What we did last year in May of 2024 and then did again in September of this year is figured out how to take a high-end enterprise system that took a full rack and shrink it into only 14 rack U. So again, a full rack is 42 rack U. Last year we shrunk it to 14 rack U, running high end. So all the features you see here on this chart are in our small form factor. And then this year, at the end of September, we shrank from 14 rack U down to 11 rack U. So that trend in both power efficiency, because data centers are running out of power, or they're doing AI. Okay, so again, both types of data centers, AI centric and standard, running out of power. So if you're more power efficient on your storage, you can use that power for something else. You can use it for AI, or you can use it for if your traditional data center, your Oracle or SAP workloads, because you're running out of power. So you can shift the power budget away from storage to something else. So power efficiency. And then form factor is always important because data centers, part of the build out is power. The other part of the build out is people need literally more servers, more storage, more networking just to run we're in a completely digital world, right? I've been around a long time. So in the old days, you didn't take a laptop to university. You took a notebook
Yeah,
and you handwrite notes. Now, anytime you see a movie that's probably in the last 20 years that has a college theme, when they show the law school or people sitting in the assembly room, they're not taking notes on a pad anymore like I used to do. They're taking notes on a laptop, right?
yeah.
So the world is digital. So that means you need more data centers, both for AI, which has accelerated that, and so power efficiency and the physical size, the smaller you can be and the more power efficient, helps the data centers function better and helps you achieve a better total cost of ownership and return on your investment from a storage perspective. Now you got to look at your TCO and RO across your entire data center, and storage only part, right? You have your servers, your networking, and your storage. So you got to try to optimize it. What we've done with our power efficiency and our small form factor is optimize at least the storage side of the equation. We don't control the networks, we don't control the servers, but at least on our side, we've continued to shrink and add more feature function into a smaller form factor. Remember, if you've got an iPhone is more powerful than the first 5 or 6 generations of a mainframe computer, and it's your phone.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
That's what's happening on
Really?
the compute side, right?
Yeah,
And same thing for
yeah,
storage.
yeah. And do you actually build and run your own data centers, or is that something you
No,
have a vendor for?
so we sell to cloud service providers, managed service providers, right, who clearly run their own data centers. And then we sell
Yeah,
the global Fortune 500. So in some cases, they service it out to a Tata or a Kyndryl, but they're still a
yeah,
physical data center. In other cases, it's their data center. They either rent them or build them, and their own IT teams run everything: the servers, the storage, the Oracle, the SQL, the AI workloads, whatever they are. And so we don't do our own data centers, but we sell to people who either A, manage them, aka the
yeah,
cloud providers and the hosting providers, or
yeah.
to big giant enterprises where they've got their own data centers, and they use their own data centers and they stick our gear along with servers and networking in there. And then obviously that manages all the software applications they use to run their business.
Right, right. Okay, interesting. Could we talk a bit about this new release that you mentioned earlier before we started chatting on the podcast about InfiniSafe cyber storage stack? Something that you had
Sure.
mentioned is something new and exciting that you've released recently. Tell us about it. What does it do?
So InfiniSafe is built into our operating system, the Infuse OS that we discussed earlier. It's a software play. And the focus of InfiniSafe is to help you thwart and recover from cyber attacks. The average enterprise will suffer 1,650 cyber attacks per week. So the question is not if you'll be attacked, it's when and how often. So what InfiniSafe does is allow you to incorporate storage as part of a comprehensive cybersecurity strategy. Bigger enterprises literally have a security operations center. In the old days, as you remember, it used to be the NOC, the network operating center. Now it's a security operating center. Okay. There's also cybersecurity software, Microsoft Sentinel, IBM QRadar, Talis. These are packages that run across the data center. But those software packages and most security operating centers, most SOCs, do not encompass storage. So by using our InfiniSafe software stack, it injects into our storage systems a number of cybersecurity technologies to help you identify if you think you might have malware or ransomware. It can actually scan the data on our storage to look for malware or ransomware using AI and ML technology to do that. We can seamlessly integrate, by the way, with your security operations center or your cybersecurity software across your data center. So if Microsoft Sentinel or Splunk sees a cyber attack, we can automatically start doing certain things on the storage. Remember, part of our play, as I mentioned before, was service-oriented automation and set it and forget it IT ops. So the idea is you don't pick up the phone, you don't text, you don't email, or obviously if you really think you're having a cyber attack, all three. Literally, the cybersecurity software or the SOC will seamlessly communicate with our system, with InfiniSafe, and then you decide what actions you want to take if that cybersecurity software sees something. So the idea again with InfiniSafe is to integrate across an entire data center and have a comprehensive cybersecurity strategy that includes the servers, includes the networks, includes the software applications, includes the edge, right? I would argue that every company today is running the castle with the big giant walls and the moat filled with crocodiles or alligators or piranha. That said, 1,650 times a week, they're getting through, right? And so you've got to leverage, after you've got the perimeter, which is what the cybersecurity software, the SOC does, and us with InfiniSafe, what we do from a storage part to have a comprehensive cybersecurity strategy. Like I said, it's not if you'll be attacked, it's when and how often. And all public companies, no matter where you are in the world, there's extensive regulations everywhere. Japan and all across the Asian countries, the EU, the UK, the US have extensive cybersecurity regulations that publicly traded companies have to adhere to. And if you're a global company with data centers in, let's say, India, Japan, Germany, and the US, if you're a global company like that, you have to adhere to the cyber regulations of every country in which you have a physical data center. So those now, by the way, most of those governments do share with each other, because they're trying to protect the world's data, right? That's what they're trying to do. So they do share, but there are times when there's specific regulation in the UK that's not exactly the same as the Japanese regulation. But if I'm
Could you give us
Toyota and I've got a
could you
data
give us an
center for
example of
things, yeah,
could you give us an example of one such regulation?
sure. So in Europe, you've got DORA 2. Okay.
Okay.
In the United States, you have the Securities Exchange Commission cyber regulations. While they're similar, they're not exactly the same. And in fact, Twain, we even did a public webinar a couple months ago, which was not only about InfiniSafe and how it functions on the storage, but literally has 8 or 9 pages listing all the government cyber regulations across the world. And that's available at www.infinidat.com. And that is about InfiniSafe, but also about the regulatory that big companies need to adhere to. And it does vary. But all of the stock exchanges have some sort of regulation, right? And as you know, many big companies trade on two stock exchanges. So if they trade on two, whatever the cyber regulations are on the Hang Seng and on the New York Stock Exchange, they have to adhere to both. Or the London Exchange and the Singapore Exchange, they have to adhere to both legally. So cyber regulations are a big deal. So that's why the InfiniSafe, as well as your Security Operations Center, they're designed to number one, protect your data, and B, there's a lot of regulatory and compliance laws for publicly traded companies in particular that they have to adhere to. Otherwise, they can get fined, of course, independent of suffering a cyber attack, which is bad enough. But the last thing you want is the US government and the Japanese government both levying a fine after the cyber attack because they find out that you violated the cybersecurity regulations in the United States and in Japan, and then you end up paying a fine in two countries. So you have that regulatory and compliance angle of cyber, but really the number one focus of InfiniSafe and the other technologies is to protect your data so it's available, right? It doesn't, if there's an attack, you can recover the data, right? That's
Right.
the idea.
Yeah, yeah. We covered a lot of ground already and spoke about, you know, just about just all aspects of storage from security to efficiency, costs, and just the different types of storage options. We spoke about so many things. But, with storage, there's one thing I think that is probably true across the industry, which is that organizations are very probably connected or probably they resist change when it comes to storage because there's so much that depends on storage, and there's probably a lot of history in how the company has done storage, and a lot of times change is hard to you know no one wants change unless it's forced. But in your experience and looking at like organizations that have made changes, significant changes especially, what do you think are the key drivers? Is it to save costs? Is it
Uh,
for better
sure.
efficiency? Is it for
Yeah. So
performance?
it's actually kind of a combination, Twain.
Okay.
Everybody wants their data to be faster, right? As I mentioned earlier, that Oracle workload that's in 5 hours now running in one. Okay, so that's business efficiency, not storage efficiency. But if your storage isn't fast, it won't go from 5 hours to one. So that is both a technical issue, but it also happens to be a business issue. Okay. Cyber has led to a lot of change in storage because a lot of storage systems don't have the cyber injection that we do. Okay. AI absolutely has changed the ballgame. So in many cases, you can use your existing storage with the right add-on, something, for example, like an AI retrieval augmented generation solution. We happen to have that. And other times you really do need to get new storage to optimize for that AI workload. So all those things drive change. And always return on investment and cost, because everyone is strapped for money. And if they can save money, for example, one of our global Fortune 500 customers was using someone else. They had 288 floor tiles of storage with someone else. Now they have 61 floor tiles, so 288 to 61 is your dramatic savings in capital expenditure, dramatic savings in operational expenditure, and in the operational manpower to run the storage, right? Dramatic savings. So they made that change because they're worried about costs. They also wanted to free up space in their data center for other workloads that are not storage, right? They need servers, they need networking. So they did it for a combination of reasons. And that's why what's driving change. AI is driving change. Cyber is definitely driving change. The complete digital transformation of the entire world, right? I still have a rotary telephone. Now, I
Wow.
have it because I live in
And it
California.
works?
It absolutely works. And one of the weird things that people don't know is and I still have a home phone system. I use my cell phone 99% of the time. But if there's an earthquake and all the power goes down in California, your phone system, the old style phones, they don't need a lot of power. They draw their power off the phone system. So if the phone system works and you have an emergency, someone got hurt badly, you can actually dial what we do in the States 911. So an ambulance will come help you because someone broke their leg. On a cell phone, if the towers are down or the power's out, you have whatever battery life you have. So, you know, that's an old style thing, right? So, but the world is all cell phones, right? And
Yeah.
pads, everything. So that's how it's changed. And storage is going through that same transformation. And it usually goes through it about every 10 years. There's some sort of I mean, the internet was a transforming event way back when in storage. That was a big deal, right?
Yeah.
Um, so uh, costs clearly, every time there's a recession, and depending on the country, and you have viewers all over the world. So in certain countries, you're not in recession. Other ones you are. Other ones are in the middle. Anytime there's a recession, automatically is holy moly, we're
Cost
spending a
cutting.
lot of money on storage. How do we cut our costs?
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. Makes sense. Makes sense. Um, so we do this little segment, the rapid fire section. I got a couple of questions for you, and if you
Sure.
could just tell me what comes top of your mind.
Great.
All right. What would you say is the most overused buzzword in data storage right now?
I'd say the most overused buzzword in storage is AI.
AI. Okay. All right. Yeah,
By the way, I'd
that's true.
argue it's probably like that in almost every angle of IT.
Yeah, that's
Software
true.
side,
Yeah.
the server side, it's all about AI. And by the way, in the old days, it was all about the internet. Then it was all about Web
Mhm.
2.0, right? And by the way,
Cloud.
way back when it was all about the database. Remember, originally the old mainframes, there was no database, right? And then a database was invented. So those all are transfer. Right now, I'd say the big buzzword's AI.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Okay. Which is one person whose opinions you trust on data storage?
Human or like an analyst firm, for sake of argument.
No, not from a human, probably. Yeah, a person. Maybe you read up what they
Um,
write or they tweet
yeah,
or
I
their
would say there's
LinkedIn.
actually this small analyst out of the UK. His name is Chris Evans. And part of the reason I trust Chris is not only is he an analyst now,
Yeah.
but guess what he used to do? He used to be a storage admin, a server admin, and a VMware admin in a global Fortune 500, right? So, and then he became a director and a VP. So he's actually from the end user side now becoming an analyst versus some other vendor telling me about the market. It's someone who was a customer basically. So that's why
Wow.
I respect. And
Interesting.
then the other guy possibly close behind is a guy named Chris Meller, who's probably the most followed storage press person. And he's very technical. A lot of the press people, as you know, are not technical. He's super technical for a press person. So he's another person that people follow.
Wow. Okay, okay, neat. Wow, those are two people to check out. Um, so when you need to when you need to focus, get deep work done, what's one productivity hack? What do you do to get deep work done?
So when I get deep work done, so first of all, I get up usually at 2 o'clock in the morning
Whoa.
and I only sleep like 5 hours a night. So I'm a kind of global, and I've had global roles at all these big companies. So when I was at EMC, I had people in Singapore, Australia, California, Massachusetts, Latin America, 5 or 6 people across Europe, so you got to be global. But it also means you're not always on the phone with your people in Japan, right? So when you're doing things at that early time, you can get a lot of work done. The other thing that's going to make you laugh is in the summertime on the weekends, especially, because I'm a startup guy, you work on the weekends, right? It's not like always in the big company, you shut down. So I sit in the backyard, you're going to laugh, by my swimming pool with a laptop, smoke cigars, and work with my sunglasses on in the sun, in the great weather, but I'm focused. I don't have young kids. My kids are all old kids, so there's no distraction. I'm in the backyard. I've got my Barry White and Luther Vandross on, and I'm focused on the emails or the PowerPoints or whatever I'm working on while I'm smoking my cigar. And it's, it's almost like you're relaxing, but you're not. You're working, but it's like you're relaxing because you're out by the pool, and I enjoy cigars and you get a lot of work done. And then clearly working off hours. So if you're a night person, you're working when everyone else is sleeping. And when you're a morning person like me, you're working when people are sleeping in the morning. So those are productivity cycles. And then find a
Yeah.
time that for me, it's in the backyard smoking a cigar and drinking a bottle of cab and really working. Now, some people don't have to do that in big companies. Obviously, they can rest on the weekend. But any of us who've been in small companies know you got to work on the weekend. So figure out a way to do it. That's fun, but you're still getting your work done.
All right, last question for you. If not for your job in tech, what would you be doing?
I would be a teacher.
Great.
So I've mentored a ton of people. When I was at IBM, I had 15 mentees from individual
Wow.
contributors all the way to vice presidents who I mentored all over the world. I had marketing people, product management people, sales people, some engineering execs. Was mentoring them because they're engineers, right? They want to understand how can I be a better business person so I could grow my career. They already knew about how to be a VP, how to manage 100 people, but what was the business angle? How could they learn about how? Because a finance person can't always run a company. An engineer can't always run a company. A marketing person, it's people who have had various experiences and understand enough about each function to A, hire the right people, because no one's an expert in everything, and B, know how to manage those people effectively and bring them together as a team. So I would say teaching. And I used to teach at the University of California when I was getting my master's degree and used to teach Chinese history, Japanese history, and American history. So I'm used to in front of the big classroom like you see in the TV, right? A bunch of freshmen and sophomores. So there's 150 people, and I would be teaching. And so I think teaching is a great thing. And one of the things I'm most proud of is if you look at people who've worked for me when they were just a product manager or just a sales guy, they're CROs, they're CMOs. Two of them are CEOs, right? So I feel proud that a lot of people that worked for me and several of them actually multiple times now have huge jobs. And I think, partially that's because some of the things I taught them. So teaching is a valuable function, whether you're a parent, whether you're a business person. And quite honestly, business is a team sport. So if you're not teaching people how to play the sport better, I don't care what your sport is. I used to wrestle in college. Wrestling is pretty much an individual sport. Same with swimming, but it is like basketball, soccer, American football, baseball, cricket. I've actually seen cricket matches before in the UK. It's a team sport, right? The bowler, the hitter, and there's fielders, just like in American baseball. And you have to catch the ball. And if you catch the ball, there's an impact of that, right? So, business and marketing, they're team sports. And part of that is teaching people, the coach, the manager, all those teams have coaches, as you know. And what's the coach's job is not just to say who goes in or goes out, it's to teach them how to hit the ball better, how to run faster, how to make a better play, how to execute better. And so teaching is what I'd be doing if I wasn't doing what I'm doing now.
I have a lot of varied interests, and it was nice that you captured so many of them in those responses. It was quite fascinating chatting with you today, Eric. Thanks so much for just joining us and sharing generously from your experience and just uh, storage. And even I think beyond storage, you just touched on a lot of different things that was quite inspiring. I'm sure that it sparked a lot of ideas and inspired quite a few listening.
Well, Twain, thank you very much. Of course, we enjoy participating with you guys on the Software Plaza podcast and looking forward to hearing from some of the listeners and some of the viewers of the podcast.
All right, yeah, that's true. And everyone listening and watching, if you found this chat interesting, go and check out what Infinidat is up to. You can go to their website, infinidat.com, and you can check out Eric on LinkedIn. You can connect with him, Eric Herzog, that's Herzog, or as you said, Zogan Store. And yeah, do catch up with him. A really fascinating person who's been around for 40 years in the storage space. So definitely has a lot to share on all things storage. Do connect with him. And join us again for the next episode as we continue our talk on all things tech. and we'll see you on that one. Thank you. Bye-bye.